Okay, it's still cold here. It's the 15th of May. Clam tide out on the beach. Fog everywhere. Fog yesterday. Very cold fog, very unusual. Sort of like our what we call beach scum, where it gets warm inland and it draws in this cold fog in the summer. But it was cold all over. It was cold inland too, so just unusual. Anyway, so update on things, where we're at, what the fuck's going on. We've got leaks showing up, leaking language actually, lab leak, and these kind of things actually showing up in the news cycle linguistics. And we're now at a point where the powers that be and their minions, the mainstream media, are in a defensive posture relative to the changing of the narrative, the overwoo. And so they're fighting on a number of fronts here. They're fighting on the lab leak language. So as an instance, it used to be that the COVID was a natural thing. It jumped from some kind of a lizard to, whatever, a frog or from a bat, and eventually, the frog bit a human or the human ate the frog, and that's how we supposedly got it. And then that didn't hold up, and then there was all of the hypothesis about a lab leak from Wuhan, the convenience of a level 4 bioweapons lab in Wuhan, and that's where this virus starts. It couldn't be ignored. Ultimately, we come up to today, after all of this wrangling, everybody bitching and moaning and fighting and scrapping about the lab leak hypothesis, always being beat down by the mainstream media as being not factual, right? They say this is not true. It did not happen. And it was, the wet market and all these other explanations, all of which were 100% bogus, and now we keep coming back to the lab leak hypothesis. But now there's been a difference because over the last few days there has emerged a video of Fauci's chief project manager for, I think it was Chapel Hill, North Carolina lab, and in which he is gleefully discussing how cool it is that they took some spike proteins and glommed them onto a coronavirus and made what we now call COVID-19. So we now know that it was man-made, it was deliberate, it was done in one bioweapons lab here in the U.S. and transported to Wuhan, is my understanding. It was paid for by the U.S. and it was nurtured and taken care of in Wuhan thereafter. But Fauci and his ilk made it. And so we find ourselves now dealing with mainstream media having to fight the leak narrative. And mainstream media is a linchpin to so much of the stuff for the powers that be. This is because they basically use narrative or mind control to brainwash the masses and move the social order, what's called social engineering. So the mainstream media is now fighting a defensive battle because the leak language is out there and now is validated because we have, I don't know his name, but he's Fauci's minion admitting it, right? So it leaked, and we know that. That's the language of the moment. So let me point out that this language will continue to evolve, and that we're in a situation where the continuance of the evolution is foregone, baked in the cake, right? And so it is leaked now, but in the future, there will be the connection that the mainstream media will have to fight then of engineered lab equals virus in a lab equals bioweapon. And so they're fighting the lab leak hypothesis now, but they're soon going to have to contend with bioweapon word, which I've been maintaining ever since I saw the CCP freaking out in October of 2019 on the deep web. Just by looking at these people who were military organization reacting, you knew it was a bioweapon and they were scared shitless. Anyway, though, so the mainstream media is going to have to be defending. Now they're defending against leaked. Soon they're going to have to defend against bioweapon. And then soon they're going to have to defend against release as opposed to leaked. And then they'll have to defend against deliberate release. And this will progress through into probably early June-ish, okay? You'll see the language evolve over these next few weeks as we go through into early June. And all of this area right here, from our perspective, from the perspective of the populace, is going to sum up to betrayal. And this betrayal is going to initiate some vast changes, all right? That's all in our Alta reports. This understanding of betrayal is going to gin up the situations that were described in the Alta reports, the Great Meeting, the Global Great Meeting, these kind of things, right? Because we now know this is not about the U.S., it's not about the factions within the U.S., it's not about factions in Europe, it's not about Wokeanism taking over Europe per se, it's about the CCP against the rest of the planet, right? The globalist against the rest of the planet. Now, I'm of the opinion that the powers that be, the globalists, are pulling the CCP's strings. And they're just up here, yet another tool of the powers that be, like the mainstream media. So I don't see them as the ultimate enemy in this. But I think that we'll come to we've come to the point now where there's enough mass of individuals that will center in over this next, say, it'll start, I mean, it'll really settle in shortly, the end of the first week in June, but it might take to the end of June before we get a really big mass of people that will start centering in on betrayal by this whole thing here, because this is betrayal at a species level, okay? And the vaccine is thrown in here as well. So we're going to get, people are going to now start linking Fauci and the Minion to the vax, and the vax to the bioweapon. They already are. And then they'll reconnect it to being a deliberate, and then it'll go into plot. And this is how it's going to go to the normies mindset, and then we'll start having normies in June arriving at the betrayal language. Betrayed. We were betrayed. It's going to cause mainstream media and the powers that be and globalists to go into something of a withdrawal, something of a, not a retreat, because they're going to basically hold their position, but you won't see any new initiatives coming out, and it's going to be really strange in this upcoming news cycle, okay? I don't know how really, I don't know how you define a news cycle. It could be a day or 2 days, but I'm saying in June, at the end of May through into June, we're going to have a period where the mainstream media is not proffering out, they're not shoveling as much shit as they have in the past, and as they will up to that point. So the absence of the shit shoveling will become noticeable as we move into June. You can call it the quiescence or whatever. I'm just calling it the withdrawal, right? They're leaving their pickets out there. They're to make you think that they're still holding the line, but the majority of their troops, so to speak, are moving back. It's that kind of strategic withdrawal. Because they have to defend. They realize they're in a defensive posture. They realize they cannot defend spread out as they are, so they're going to consolidate on just a couple of things to defend against, and they're going to have to really defend hard to prevent this language from eating them all up. So my projection, my forecast, my conclusion is that the betrayal language will be so deep in its attack on the powers that be that they will start sacrificing their own to, in an organized retreat, basically, it's the old bloodthirsty mob or a hungry bear kind of a thing, right? So if you're running away from a bear, he's chasing you because he's hungry and he thinks he wants to eat you. You stop and you throw things on the ground, your clothing. He will stop and smell them just because he doesn't know if it's food or whatever. Their eyesight is not necessarily all that good for this sort of thing. And he'll stop and smell them, and that gives you this extra time to get even further away, right? So you're sacrificing as you're going along, especially in Alaska where you might need that clothing. And you're going to spend a lot of time up a tree, very likely. So in a mob situation, what you do is, the powers that be are going to face all of humanity as a mob, and so they're going to take some very highly visible faces and throw them out to us, and basically then shut the doors and basically wait to see if that satisfies the mob. And if it doesn't, then they'll grab somebody else and throw them out and shut the door, right? Because we're at that stage of this breakdown, of this global narrative breakdown. This is not an economic breakdown. This is, okay, all right, so let's put it another way. This is an global economic breakdown. This is a global currency breakdown. This is a global social order breakdown. This is a global government breakdown. So far, it's not been a global technical breakdown, so we haven't lost the internet and all of this kind of thing, but who knows, that may well appear in this mix as well. But basically, it's all because the narrative is breaking, has broken, cannot be repaired. So the mind control by narrative is gone now. And the powers that be are reacting to this lack of their mind control techniques working. And here's the issue. It's the 3% or greater, all right? So 3% or greater equals revolution. If you look at it, it's true. It looks like a 7. That's a greater than symbol. Hang on. I just get sloppy. I type so much. So if you have 3% of your population that's determined that something shall happen, it will happen. And so you get 3% of the population that holds a specific view and is determined that that view is factual. Over time, that view will overtake the social order. If you get 3% of the population, it's strange. We have there's these inbuilt thresholds within humans that hover between 1.5% and 3%. And if you get to the edge of this, which is 3%, then you can have a revolution. If we can get 3% of the people in the United States to agree on any given single thing and decide that that thing is both solidly factual and key to their understanding of reality, then they will carry that thing forward no matter what. And their sheer determination and that mass, the 3%, will induce another group to join them. And these guys don't necessarily agree with the same fervor, but nonetheless, they agree that there's something going on here, and they're going to go support it, and it grows and grows, and then it overtakes things. So when the United States had the Revolutionary War, there were only 3% of the people committed to the United States being a separate country. 97% of the people were basically ambivalent about it, not involved, disconnected from it, just like we have now. And then shit happened, and all of a sudden over a couple of decades, you end up with the United States forming. We're at one of those things now, right? So note that you can have large chunks of the population that share a common denominator. So you have 20% of the Chinese population total is Han, and that's how they rule, okay? Is because the Han, because Chinese are xenophobic to a degree that the rest of us aren't, and that we wouldn't understand, and the Han control the power structure and have for so long because they were a 20%, but that was a 1/5 of the population that was basically cohesive, whereas the other parts of the population were relatively fractured. All right, so it's estimated that that some 20% of the population in the U.S. is woke. The problem is that, and that won't engender a revolution, and it's because the woke doesn't qualify to meet the 3% factors, because these people don't think that woke is factually true. They cannot, you can't sell the Wokean perspective to other people. So the 3% here could sell the idea of the United States being its own separate country, the 13 colonies going their own way. That was a sellable idea to the regular general population. But to the population that is not woke, the woke religion, the woke premises and stuff cannot be sold to us. So this is more like a garrison kind of a thing. So that 20% is trouble, but it's not really enough to dominate, except that they're in the institutions and they are in the power structure. But they're not able to grow, they're stymied, and that is part of the breakdown that we're going through here at this whole thing. So woke is in the process of dying at this point. Anyway, though, so we're at this point here where we're going to have 3% of the population or greater that's going to insist that we've all been betrayed on this. And it's much larger than the 3%. It's going to get very much larger, because the normies are going to become involved in understanding as the narrative breaks down. So it's a virtuous cycle. As the narrative breaks down, more people come on in and see the betrayal. As they see the betrayal, they go tell their friends, holy shit, look what I learned today. And that aids in breaking down the narrative, and their friends see the betrayal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so they see things now. Now what they need to do is to grasp that it's a species level thing, right? It's not limited to the US, it's not limited to whatever country you happen to be. It is globalists versus the rest of us through their minion class, all right, through the enemy class. This is the narrative alterations that we will see in the near future. We'll start seeing people talk about the powers that be as the enemy class. And we'll start identifying the mainstream media. This is not going to be good for individuals in the mainstream media. The CCP is relatively protected and relegated. As this occurs, you will see yet more leaks of things coming out. This is leaky woo period in the overwoo, right? So we'll see a reaction within the Wokean, Fauci supporting, mask wearing leftists that will try and harden things up relative to the rest of the population. They'll try and insist on a lot of these things that will not happen. People just won't go along with it. The backlash on it will start eroding at their own internal supporting base, because now a lot of people will say, well, this stuff doesn't make sense even to us. And we'll see maybe even the idea that they're going to try and do something to trigger a continuity of government sort of a deal, right? So in the United States, one could hypothesize that a false flag of some form, something have to be bigger than the pipeline, but if the pipeline had been national and they could have held it for a couple of weeks, that would have done it, maybe, because there's other issues, other ramifications that go along with that, because I don't think the military is involved or is supportive. In any event, so we're going to go along and get into June. So as we leave the month of May, in a general sense, we'll see that this language and this language has led to both a hardening of attitudes and a resting of attitudes. They're not going to advance them, like I was saying. So the mainstream media is going to sort of time out, right? It'll time out in the early part of, or last part of May and early part of June. That won't stop the escalation of the desperation language, but as the desperation language grows, it actually is now going to be able to be split out more from our viewpoint. So in the set of desperation, we're going to see the economic. We'll also see the COVID stuff, but not about the disease, more about the vax. And this will be, this itself will be split into fear, uncertainty, and doubt by the people who have been vaxxed as more and more comes out, right? There will be a lot more of fear, uncertainty, and doubt by those who are hesitant, who are the unvaxxed normies. I'll just put normies. Because the powers that be are going to still they're going to still keep up these narratives. They're not going to shut down the narratives. They're just not going to advance them with any new narratives. They're not going to be able to put any new energy into it. They're just going to be able to maintain things as they go along. So we'll see that the COVID-19 vaxxed is going to fall into those people that won't get it no matter what. You know, they know it's a vax, and they're going to be very loud. Their emotional responses are going to be driving the whole betrayal thing into the desperation language. So there will be this health level of desperation language that people will be focused on that, and they won't give a shit about the economics because somebody in their family took a vax and had a hard time of it, or something along those lines. Okay, and then we're going to have the political, because that's going to just roll out there as the grift comes undone, right? All of the political grift, all the corruption, and this is going to be global. This is why this is going to be so fucking weird for everybody, because it's not going to be like you can be here in the United States when all this shit's going down and the Democratic Party is imploding and trying to put anything and everything between themselves and lynch mobs over the Fauci stuff, over the election theft and all of this kind of stuff, right? And the Wokian church is breaking up and attacking itself and falling all to pieces. It's not like you're going to be able to get on a jet and fly to Europe and go and sip your latte on a Parisian street and have an ordinary regular time. This shit's going to be global. The corruption is global. It's got to be dealt with at a global level. It will be dealt with at a global level. And here's a clue for you people. All right, so here's a clue. And so you can take this, I don't want to say you can take this as gospel or anything, but you can take this as factual. It is known that in 1907, the planning for the Bolshevik Revolution began. Okay, so in 1917 is when the revolution began. And in the meantime, there was the Russian Revolution, which was in 1912. Okay, but here's the big part of this. Bolsheviks took over the Russian Revolution and seized it for the communists. It was not a communist revolution. They had no intention of killing the Tsar and his family. The Bolsheviks came on in and did all these dirty deeds, and then there were 72 years of communist history imposed on the Russian people. Now, from 1917, it took them until 1929 to finish that revolution and conquer all of Russia. And the wars were brutal as the Bolsheviks tried to take over all of the what we now think of as the Soviet Union, all of those states. So we were looking here at a 12-year war that went on following all of the other problems from the revolution. And so we are in one of those periods right now, only it's global. So all of us, there could be a lot of countries that won't be as badly affected. Maybe, some island nation somewhere won't be as badly affected, but everybody's going to get affected at some level. Island nations because of the supply chains breaking down and tourism and all of this sort of thing. But so we're in this global betrayal that we've got to deal with. These people here have betrayed our species. They betrayed our planet. You know, Greta Thunberg should be up there, you know, getting a torch and a pitchfork and ready to go hoist that pitchfork up some globalist butts instead of talking to these fuckers and trying to convince them to do shit. They are the enemy class. This will become evident here. It will take us 12 to 15 years just to see that we're over the hump on the war against the globalists. So as sci-fi world rolls in here, we're in 2021, and I think it'll go 2041 before we can say that you know, we're in the final phase of mopping up from this disaster. And that is to say, cleaning out the political garbage and the corruption that has allowed all of this and all of the other stuff to occur. Now, that part's just my conclusions, right? This is just my estimation on how long it'll take, based on a number of things here. But I know that that this betrayal understanding is happening, okay? The center left is collapsing in the United States. The center left is the backbone for the little tiny Wokian. So the Wokians are in schools and all of this kind of stuff. You could get casual agreement on a number of things that would allow you on a polling situation to say, as I say, about 20% of the population would respond as though they were Wokian, as though they understood and accepted this belief system. But within the Democratic political organization, it is this hardcore that maybe it's a quarter of the total Democratic population is hardcore Wokian, hardcore cancel culture, or that sort of thing. And maybe of those, you've got, you know, a small number that are the actual communists that are running things. Because Wokianism, although it plays into communism, in and of itself is not per se communism. It's just weaponized empathy and a misunderstanding of things. It's this weird religion without a God. Anyway, so as this betrayal understanding has worked its way through the left, you're seeing lots of people there just get the fuck out of the left as the left keeps moving further and further to the progressive left into extremism. And so we're witnessing, as forecast in 2016, the destruction of the Democratic Party, not through adversity, but through success. The corruption has finally eaten over enough of the party that the rank and file, that as they encounter the betrayal and understand it, are leaving and just saying, we're not going to have anything to do with you guys. And so their power base is being reduced. It's happening at all levels. There's fewer of us paying attention to their mind control, so that adds to it. There's more people like myself out here doing weird-ass videos. You know, we've got the alternative media splitting up, breaking up, and fanning out. And so that causes more of this chaos, more of these virtuous cycles, and we're getting more and more of the normies out of the mind control trap of the powers that be. This is a natural process that was initiated more visibly with the entrance, with the alignment on December 28th, I think it was, of the Grand Conjunction, 23rd through the 28th, that initiated our entrance into the age of Aquarius, which is, you know, coincidentally the age of knowledge. We're getting knowledge, and that's revealing all of this stuff to us. Now, I've discussed a lot of this stuff about the individual things here in other videos, but I just needed to go through a bunch of little things individually, collect them all up, and tie them into this. So we've had our lab leak. We've also had all other kinds of leaks of information. And so now we're getting more information leaking out that, you know, about the failure of the Biden administration, how everybody feels about it. Everybody's leaking their feelings about it, their hot takes, their cold takes, etc. All of this is compounding the whole thing leading into the betrayal for June, this betrayal understanding. We've got Woonomics also participating in the sense of people don't want to work because the government's leaking out. They're just printing money and leaking it out to people. It's not helicopter money. It's more like, you know, plumbing leak money. As no one's getting effectively rich, it's just enough to keep things ticking along, but not really effectively working. All of these leaks, we're getting leaks that, you know, the CDC, National Institute for Infectious Diseases, and all of these official places run by Fauci, less than half of them have taken the vax. Less than half. They're estimating it's over half, but they let you know they're estimating. It's far less than half. These people work with this shit. They're not that stupid. That's coming out. The contradictions between the, oh man, I got to have a mask or people will think I'm a Republican mindset, because now they've been inculcated, they've been trained to wear the mask and identify it as part of their political identity. So what are they going to do? This is going to cause some real unforeseen side effects within the mental, within the perceptions of these individuals, of themselves and their political allegiances when they start walking out without masks. I kid you not. It's very much akin to them deciding to go out, you know, half naked or something, right? No pants on. And so they're going to feel odd all the time, and it's going to bring up into question all of these different things in their mind. Stuff the mainstream media didn't need to have happen. Mainstream media that's why you see the mainstream media freaking out, trying to enforce the mask edict. It's because they can't have another thing breaking the mind control in the narrative. And yet this really does, because it's a physical thing, the body-mind response, causing your other minds to react and think, okay, something weird's going on here. We also notice that they're now down to 100% bribery for the shots. So at their very end, we're at the very end of their ability, at least within the United States, to give out mass amounts of vaccine. And we've gone through the language of, you know, it was your personal safety. And then it was, you know, protect others, virtue signaling. And then it's, you know, your social or political identity and duty to get the vax. All of those have been burnt out. People just aren't responding to those. And so they're getting the very last cohort of people that would willingly take this. The last cohort of totally uneducated, mind-controlled people are being sucked in by bribery. You know, free donuts, that kind of thing. It's a little bribery too. It's not even big bribery. We've seen that the employers have now, it's leaked out that employers are, the justice system, what we have of it left, the political workers' compensation kind of system, all of these guys do consider employers mandating vaccinated people to create what they call a recordable event, okay? This recordable event means that your employer is liable if you have a bad reaction to the vaccine. And that means workers' comp for that, covering bills and so forth for that. So if your insurance company, and your insurance companies will refuse to pay because this is an experimental product and procedure. So, but workers' comp has to pay, so you will get covered for this. So if you have vax-related issues and you've been socially pressured even at your work to have the vax, next time you have to go to the ER, file it as an workers' comp claim. Fauci, I think, is doomed. Okay, I think he's going to be one of the first ones that they're going to pitch out. That the mainstream media will offer him, and ultimately they'll offer Bill Gates and all these people to the mob on the outside of the door, and then they'll shut the door real quick and see if that satisfies the mob. But I think Fauci is doomed. I don't know how bad it will be for him. I don't know if they'll actually insist on death penalties and that kind of thing. But it's going to get really ugly as we go through these next few years. Because if we apply, so somewhere in here, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, there might be a resolution to Fauci, to all of his plotting and work here that created this situation. Now, there are no countermeasures to the vaccine. I keep getting people sending me emails saying there must be a countermeasure. The powers that be would not have created an evil and released it into the planet without a countermeasure. And yes, they would, because they don't have to encounter the evil, which is the COVID. They don't have to encounter the virus, and they also do not have to encounter vaccinated people. They have enough money to be able to insulate themselves with unvaccinated people, and so they need not ever run into vaccinated people, so they don't really care about countermeasures. Plus, there are no countermeasures to the vaccine. The powers that be never intended to take any of the vaccine, as we see from the fact that the CEO of Pfizer, the CEO of Moderna, they don't take their own shit, right? They won't take their own vaccine products. So there are no countermeasures. There's not going to be a savior. You guys have to grasp this. We're at that level of seriousnness here. You know, this is not a game. This is not a comic book. You know, this is not a sci-fi movie, end of the world thing. This is an attack on our species, and we don't get to have the easy save. It just isn't going to happen. So if there's going to be anything, people will sweat and die to achieve it. But I don't see it's possible. The body may repair itself. It may, if you've taken the vax, the body may over time be able to get rid of the product in you and not make the mRNA or not make the spike protein anymore. But that's unknown. That's totally unknown. We don't know how the body is going to react to this shit because it's never been done before. When they did it with animals, all the animals encountered COVID and got really, really, really sick and died. Or this was with previous with SARS. Anyway, so now some brief, necessary and ugly housekeeping here. Okay, so some people in the, let's put quotes around it, patriot movement. You know, I don't like people that use that word. Anybody that self-identifies, I question them. If you identify, if you're out there, you know, saying I'm a patriot, that's, to me, that's, you're a social justice warrior. You're doing virtue signaling. You're doing the same shit as those fuckers. Okay, so that doesn't get any respect from me, especially linguistically. But within the patriot movement, there have been a bunch of assholes doing asshole kind of things, and they need to wise up to the fact that they're being assholes and correct their behavior. And these assholes specifically are Scott McKay, Michael Jaco, Mel K, and Nino Rodriguez, who have been bashing on Jordan Sather. There's other people that bashed on him too, but they're just casual guys. But these are assholes. These are self-identified as patriots. Now, they're bashing on Jordan Sather. Not that Jordan Sather's got a particularly good track record, but he's, in my opinion, he's a growing, authentic and mostly honest human, as all humans can be, right? Anyway, so his growth is notable and is worthy of respect, and he's done a lot of good work with the patriot movement, right? So I don't think this bashing of Jordan is deserved merely because he asked questions of these individuals. I think this bashing of Jordan online by these individuals is particularly stupid, all right, and asshole behavior. It is magnified by the fact that these individuals are trading on the fact that they are big-ish people, right? And Jordan is not. So they're literally saying they will bash him on the head. They will hit him on the head. And threatening to come and confront him should they ever meet at a conference and this sort of thing, right? Basically, they're trying to intimidate. And so this is, in my way of thinking, this is gang stalking behavior on the part of these individuals. This is also malicious. This is also examples of obvious threats, intimidation, and may even rise to the status of RICO, right? I know I'm being sued under RICO by butt-headed cult, the Blue Chicken Cult. And, RICO is a wide brush, you can paint a lot of people with it, and I don't know if this is legally a RICO kind of a gang activity of these guys getting fierce and threatening physical violence against Jordan Sather, and it's more than one of them. And here's the thing of it, right? if an ordinary person sees a big guy threatening a little person, somebody who's not physically at the same stature, my natural inclination is to go with the little guy and help him beat the shit out of the big bully. So in my opinion, these individuals are bullies. And the hell of it is that these individuals, Scott McKay, Michael Jaco, Mel K, Nino Rodriguez, are being bullies for grifters. They're doing this because Jordan Sather didn't attack anybody. He's not a traitor. He hasn't turned on his political viewpoints or any of that kind of shit. All he did was ask some questions, some serious questions that deserve serious answers from some other assholes, some grifters, Charlie Ward and Simon Parks. Okay, and he bitched. Jordan Sather bitched about Charlie Ward inventing this term, the QFS, the quantum financial system, and presenting this giant, fantastic fantasy confidence game and stealing money from people using this thing for which there is no evidence anywhere, and the sole source for this shit is Charlie Ward. Okay, and there's no support for it any place at all. There is no QFS. It is what I call an external savior myth. You're thinking some external savior is going to come and rescue your financial system with the QFS, and you're being sold, you're being taken. And I agree that Jordan Sather was perfectly correct in calling these people out. And if they're not producing some kind of a confidence game, some kind of a rig, trying to take money from people, then they should simply answer the questions. And the questions are not trick questions or anything, just answer the questions. And there's specific questions for Charlie Ward, there's specific questions for Simon Parks. The QFS system is bogus, it doesn't exist. Neither of these people have ever had any contact with the group or individuals that are associated with Q, in spite of their claims to the contrary. And Scott McKay, Michael Jaco, Mel K, and Nino Rodriguez need to stop bashing Jordan in order to support two grifters. Now, if Jordan is coming on out and saying terrible things about you, you got a different perspective on it, right? But from my point of view, all he did was ask questions of the two grifters that I personally would like to see answered. And I've got a lot of other questions for these two guys as well. So anyway, I hate having to get down to personalities. It doesn't end well and it never really ends. But there are times you have to say that, be careful, people. I agree with Jordan Sather. There's a nasty, evil grift going on. Don't give any of these people any of your money thinking that there's going to be some kind of a reset that's going to give you vast wealth and all of that. That shit is not going to happen. We're heading into a really terrible time that's going to last for decades. People got to get their minds together and get serious if they want to survive. We've had an attack on the species by part of our species. As a species, we've got to deal with it. So there's an aberration in the pack. And when that happens, the pack as a whole has to deal with the aberrant gene. And we've got to eliminate the threat that this poses to our species. And part of the big threat here is the mainstream media and the mind control narrative. As it degrades, it will continue to degrade further on a one by one basis, but at some point, as I say, in June or so, the mainstream media is going to go into a period of cessation of putting out new stuff. It's going to collapse to the point where there just won't be the energy. At that point, I'll mark that when the mainstream media gets to the point of cessation, which I think will be in early part of June. I'll mark that as the beginning in the sci-fi world, because then the narrative will be free and all kinds of weird ass shit's going to come out just about the same time that we get all of the UFO stuff as well. So it's going to get really difficult to go through. Now, some of the previous reports that I'd done suggested that we were going to get into a period of global food riots. The reports suggested that the global food riots would spill over into buildings that housed no food, that had no food in them, but the people that were in the riots wouldn't know this. They would break in anyway. And that this would occur in Rome, and specifically at the Vatican, and it would occur in other places around the planet, also here in the United States, in Maryland or Delaware, or both. It was just unclear in the reports. And within these, both in the Vatican and in the food riots hitting in the U.S. here, there would be buildings that would be broken into that would have that would offer up secrets revealed by way of classified documents and these sort of things that will come out of it. I don't expect it'll be this kind of thing where the building is broken into in the morning and we have any real understanding of stuff coming out of it by that afternoon. It's going to be chaotic for a long period of time. It's just that these things will be associated with that knowledge coming out. As that comes out, as the fracturing occurs, as it will contribute even more to the fracturing of the narrative. And this will lead to a period of time that it might go for years and years and years, depending on where you live and what your interests are. You'll notice it more if you'll notice it less if you're paying attention to gardening as opposed to other things, this sort of thing, right? Or if you're really interested in stamp collecting, I don't think it's going to impact you that much, a lot of this stuff. But we're going to get to a period here, I think probably, let's just say June 15th, some point around there, where we'll have this cessation of the mainstream media pumping out new narrative, and we begin this process called that the report's called the destruction of the past. And it's sort of a misnomer, right? Because it's really it's a destruction of the fake past, and it's the breakdown of the fake overlays on real human history. Not only recent human history as in UFO crashes, but way ancient human history as in the clamp down, the fake narratives that has controlled all of academia for, I don't know, 500 years or longer maybe. So this breakdown, this destruction of the past over these next 20 years is what really initiates us into the point where we will have probably 2035, 2041, at some point in there, we will have the first humans that will be born into a generation that will have access to actual real human history. However much it's debated, however much it's disputed, there will be no area that won't be allowed to be investigated. And this will be a huge thing for all generations going forward. Now, we'll enjoy a lot of that, right? But we'll never be able to get the shit out of our heads that is bogus relative to humans. All of us that are alive now are going to have to deal with unlearning so much. And so that generation that's born 2035, 2041, they'll be the first free humans born in perhaps thousands of years. So it's good. It's truly remarkable times. Species level alteration, remarkable times. Evolution of our social order beyond merely evolution of ourselves as individuals. The evolution of the whole social order is occurring now, and we're fortunate enough to live through it. It's going to be chaotic, and many of us won't survive it, but just to be here now is an incredible boon from universe that you just have no understanding. We will not be able to grasp until we're dead and are in our long sleep as to how fantastic it was to be here during this time of these great stresses here on our planet. No organism grows without stress. No social order progresses without great stress. Here we are in the greatest stress of all, which is the attack on our species by internal and maybe even external. We don't know yet. And it just, you know, especially for old bald farts like myself who like to fight, it just does not get any more intense than this period now.